Welcome to the Vibrant Life podcast. This is the official podcast of the Vibrant Life community, and I'm Sarah Nolan, a burnout prevention and energy management consultant. And I'm here today with Tim Ringgold, who has been a board certified music therapist in Orange County, California since 2008. He's the author of the book Sonic Recovery, Harness the Power of Music to Stay Sober. He has provided music therapy to thousands of teens and adults in residential treatment and is sought after international speaker, having shared the stage with some of the top minds on the subject of music, the brain, and addiction. Tim was the first person to give a TEDx talk on music therapy in 2012. And Tim is a former regional president of the American Music Therapy Association. And Tim, I am so excited to have you here today because, music is, I don't talk about it very much in my program. I don't talk about it much really at all, but I think it's a huge, component to the process that my people go through, and a huge benefit. And I feel almost bad that I haven't talked about it before. So I'm so glad to have you as a music therapy expert, because this is such an amazing compliment to everything that the audience is already doing. So thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to hear more of your story.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Sarah.
Yeah, so can you share with us a little bit about your journey with music therapy and recovery and everything that you're doing today?
Sure. I'm a career musician, lifer. I walked on stage when I was 4 and sang I Want a Harmonica for Hanukkah in my kindergarten winter program. I was a soloist, and I got the bug right away. And I kept, I was active in music. I had a scary music teacher, like piano lady would come to the house, like the church organist. She was terrifying. But then I picked up the guitar in high school to try to find an identity for myself as someone who switched schools. And as a vocalist, I needed someone to accompany me. And so, well, who better than me? So, you accompany yourself either on a piano or on a guitar, and guitar was cool back in the 80s. Uke is very much the thing today that, the cool thing kids play. But back in the 80s, guitar was pretty cool still. So I taught myself how to play guitar. And while I was continuing to progress as a vocalist and a musician, I had the honor to sing for Pope John Paul II in St. Peter's Square as a soloist when I was 16.
Wow. How did you do that?
Well, I just happened to be lucky, okay. Like anything in life. I was in the right choir at the right time, and my voice had dropped into a deep, deep bass voice, and it was the right piece of music that they wanted for this performance. And my choir was on a tour in Italy, and they arranged it so that we could perform during a papal audience. And every Wednesday, the Pope comes into St. Peter's Square and has an audience, which is basically like a sermon without the Mass. And Catholic pilgrims from all around the world come to attend. And it was spring, and there was about 13,000 pilgrims from all over the world. And there was our choir from Fairfield, Connecticut, and there was a choir from Poland. And we were up on the steps of St. Peter's Square with a single microphone, and we would just hand the microphone on its stand from one choir to the other and take turns singing for all the pilgrims. And it came time for me to sing a solo, and I got to hear my voice reverberating around the colonnades of St. Peter's Square. And it was just like an amazing experience as a musician, just got goosebumps just thinking about it. And I still have the picture of us and the Pope from that day. And it's in my office because this was really one of those mountaintop moments in my life, just thinking about the number of people who have passed through St. Peter's Square in, who knows how many, I don't know how old it is to be candid, but, just to be one of those people that on that day to get to share music. And early on, I found that music was a gift and a joy, but it wasn't until I was 22 where I kind of had that defining moment in my life. And that was, unfortunately, on April 18th, 1995, my 5 best friends were murdered.
Oh my gosh.
I went to 5 funerals in
Wow.
4 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was like Groundhog's Day from hell. I just kept
Mm-hmm.
waking up, burying another friend, waking up,
Mm-hmm.
burying another friend over and over and over. And I sang a song at all of their funerals as my way of saying goodbye. And it was a song I had written about them years
Mm-hmm.
before. And my community kept coming up to me, thanking me so much for the song, but it tore me up to sing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the night of the last funeral, like one of my 2 remaining friends said, "Hey, you want to go see a show? There's this guy, Steve Morse, playing." And I was like, "Yeah, I need some music." And I want to say, like, you know, for 2 hours at this show, I was at peace.
Mm-hmm.
And no amount of drugs or alcohol or porn or screens or TV or junk food had numbed the pain for that whole week prior. And I tried them all.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing worked. The music did. And I suddenly figured out what everyone else was feeling when I was playing.
Mm, yeah.
Because when I was playing, I had a very different experience. But when I was listening and receiving the music, I was like, oh, that's what everyone was experiencing. I get it now. And in that moment, I just dedicated the rest of my life to helping other people reach for music in their toughest times.
Such a powerful experience. And from that point, when you were 22, with that situation, did you immediately start creating this music therapy program that you do today, or did it take you a little bit of time to realize, okay, this is what I want to do?
I knew that I wanted to use music to serve others.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in my life, the only way I knew how to do that was as a musician.
Yeah.
And so I became a recording artist, and I was a mock star, which is a rock star that hasn't made it yet. And I went into the music industry and the music field to make it as a musician. And my band played really dark, heavy music to disaffected kids. And our band was very spiritual. And our whole point was like, I don't care who you are, you can have a direct connection to something bigger than you. I don't care what you've done. I don't care, you know, who your parents are. You personally can have this direct connection anytime you need it to something bigger than you. And the music was that bridge. And so I can tell you, I started having some of those powerful conversations with teens, and these were goth kids, you know, that were really low, you know, and kind of marginalized kids in their schools. And one day I'm emailing back and forth with a fan about his life. And at the end of the email thread, he's like, "Dude, I just got more out of this than a year of being in therapy. And I've been in therapy for a year."
Yeah.
And what I realized was the music created such a powerful connection between the two of us. Music created this safe space, and it allowed the two of us to just dive deep. Right. And that's what music really does. It creates this safety for us that, like, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
You're going through this too. Oh, those lyrics, those are my lyrics. Whoa. I haven't told anybody I'm going through that. I haven't even told my parents. And you went through that too? Yeah, man. Wow. And that connection of I'm not alone is one of the most powerful gifts music gives us. And so as a musician, I was able to, you know, minister and serve kids directly as, you know, crazy guy on stage, liquid latex, heavy music. But that scene, you know, and the music industry is exhausting. It's not healthy. They say sex, drugs, and rock and roll in that order for a reason. And I found the woman of my dreams, and I couldn't stay faithful to her. I just was so caught up in the culture of music, which in the 80s was oh my God, it would never survive the Me Too movement of today.
Yeah.
It was so misogynistic back in the 80s. All the signals, girls, 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 was literally the name of the song by Motley Crue.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was just pounded into us young testosterone-filled boys, like, this is what you do. This is cool. This is your goal. And so I didn't know what to do. And one day, somehow who is now my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, she found this article on sex addiction. Neither of us had ever heard anything about it. I read the article. It had a link to like, here's a quiz you could take. Like you might have, you might be a sex addict, Seth. And it was like 10 questions. They were very unique questions. It wasn't like, do you like chicks? It was really specific. And it said like, if you answer yes to 2 or more of these questions, you might want to go to a meeting. And I answered yes to 8 of them.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what's going on? Because I could take or leave a drink. I could take or leave weed. I never reached for heroin or meth, tried everything else out there. I was like, nah, just a typical recreational user. But women were my kryptonite. And the thing about addiction is that people are fine, upstanding citizens in many areas of their life. And then there's this one substance or behavior that is like kryptonite. And I use the phrase kryptonite because even Superman was powerless when he was around kryptonite. It just sapped him instantly. And that was exactly the experience I had around women. I had no power of my own. I gave all my power to them. And so I landed myself in a 12-step meeting and my whole world changed. That was February 17th, 2003. I realized like, I can't be on the road. I can't be a touring musician. This is not compatible for me. Maybe others can make it work. It's not going to work for me. And I was struggling because we were engaged. What am I going to do? And I discovered music.
I have a question about when you took that quiz and you found the results that like, okay, there's a sex addiction. I feel like most people, when they learn about something like that, they're like, that's not a big deal. It's not, they don't recognize it enough in themselves, or it's easy to downplay it and feel like, because it's a big undertaking to get that recovery, so what was your motivation to stop everything and pursue that?
Well, that's a great question and a good catch, because at the time I was in a leadership development program through this company called Landmark Education. And it was a super intense 7-month program, and to become a workshop leader for them. And in order to become certified, you had to lead 27 different sections of this workshop to your peers, and they had to rank you on whether or not you were authentic in your leading. And one day I couldn't get passed off on one of my sections, and my peers said to me, they were like, you're phony, you're full of it, you're hiding something, and we can smell it, and it's gross.
Wow.
And I had a really powerful one-on-one conversation with somebody. He goes, dude, what are you hiding? And I said, I'm hiding to him. I said in the parking lot, I said, dude, I'm hiding the fact that I haven't been able to stay faithful to my girlfriend for 4 years.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hiding, because she's the love of my life. And if I tell her, I'm going to lose her. But I can't ask her to marry me because I can never ask the person to marry me that I've been cheating on. So I'm stuck. And it was in that moment, he's like, well, you know what you got to do. And it was just clear. It was just clear in that moment. I'm 6 months into this training. I really want to become a workshop leader. I love this woman. We are stuck in limbo. My life is stuck right now. And if I don't take the step that I'm afraid to take, nothing's going to happen in the 2 areas of my life that I'm really committed to. So if I want something to happen in my life in these areas that are important, I'm going to have to take the step. And so I took the step and I just leaned into it. And, it was very, I'll say, one of my friends, if he hadn't stuck up for me, he said to me, he goes, look, if you're unwilling to make that call to your wife, my girlfriend at the time, he goes, we're done as friends. He goes, because I just can't have people in my life who don't have integrity.
Wow. Yeah.
He's like, so you do you, but
What a
just so
great
we're
friend.
clear, right? He was so clear in his own like boundaries and his own integrity for like what works, and what works in his life is having other people around him who are in integrity in their life, because then that inspires him. And so I was like, oh, well, I don't want to lose my friend. And wow. So suddenly I just jumped, and I was willing, I thought I was going to lose her. And ironically, we went through a really powerful process together, and she told me later on she was going to leave me pretty soon at that point anyway, since nothing was going forward. And I was convinced she was going to leave me if I told her. And if I had let my fear do the talking, I would have lost her by not telling her. But I stood in possibility, and in possibility, the outcome was completely unpredictable. And I think that's the message, which is that, in life, we think we're mind readers. We think we're fortune tellers. We think we know the future. We have no clue how it works. Otherwise, it would be boring. Right. And we'd all be rich and successful, but it doesn't work that way. And so never let your fear, like, don't walk down the dark alley. Great. That kind of fear, healthy, cool. But in the 21st century, for most of us, the fears that are stopping us are more psychological fears. They're not safety fears.
Exactly.
Right. And so to this day, like that moment, if I had let my fear do the decision making, I wouldn't be where I am. And we reconciled, and then we got engaged about 6 months later. And while we were engaged, that's when I was really struggling about what to do about music. And she just said, if you want to go back to school, we can afford it, And I went on to the local university's website that night, and I scrolled their index of majors from A to Z just to see anything. And I ran into the 2 words, music therapy. And that was another one of those pivotal moments in my life, because I clicked on the link. What? And it described what a music therapist does for a living. Sounded like my dream job. And the type of person that becomes a music therapist, that sounded like an autobiography. And I filled out my online application and my FAFSA right in that same seat. And I never looked back.
What you're describing, I've actually been thinking about this with some clients and people I've been talking with recently about how, we're all just sitting on gold all around us. This music therapy thing was there your whole life, and you just didn't know it until you took that step. You followed your instincts, took that step to look into, and there it was, and when we are brave enough to listen to that gut instinct and follow those possibilities, look what happens, look what opens up. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
So you got started with learning, and went into becoming certified, or you got a degree at that.
Yeah, you for music therapy, it's a allied health field. It's very much like physical therapy with music instead of exercise.
I see.
So you get like a bachelor's, master's, or PhD, do an internship, sit for your board certification exams, continuing ed units, and you work in either an educational or healthcare setting using music as a clinical tool, like a toolkit, to work on non-musical goals for clients who need help in some area of their life. And music's inherently therapeutic, just like exercise is inherently therapeutic, and you don't need a physical therapist to exercise. But every once in a while, you might have a challenge with your body that requires the really focused use of exercise, the really targeted use of exercise. And the person who knows the right way to use exercise in that setting is a board certified physical therapist, a licensed physical therapist, right? So you go, you get PT, you get it done, and your life works better because your body works better.
Yeah.
Music therapy, very similar. Music, inherently therapeutic. That's why it's so great, because we've all personally been relieved by music, comforted by music, inspired by music, right? I don't introduce anybody to music. And you don't need a music therapist to enjoy it. You don't need a music therapist to learn it. But there are certain times in your life where you're dealing with specific diagnosis or challenge where the targeted use of music, when used correctly, will really make a profound impact in what you're going through. So that's really like, I was like, oh, wow, I can like direct this as a tool to repair and, recover. And so that my TED Talk, how that all started was I was working in a hospital and I was part of the pain management specialists. And so you go to a hospital, if you're admitted to the hospital, I worked in oncology for people with cancer, and you're admitted and you are struggling with whatever your diagnosis is, which in this case is cancer. And you have symptoms sometimes like pain or anxiety or nausea, right? Particularly pain, physical pain and anxiety. And the frontline doctors that you get assigned, they have some awareness of medications that they could prescribe for you for pain or for anxiety. Right. And they will prescribe them. And many times they work. Cool. Sometimes they don't. So they then refer to the pain management team. They know the really good drugs, the really powerful stuff and what the right combinations of things are. So then they'll go in and, prescribe something a little different. A lot of times that works. Great. And then there were the patients where none of that worked and they were still symptomatic with pain or anxiety. And those were my referrals. And so when the meds failed, the docs prescribed music.
Wow.
And I would go see the sickest, most symptomatic, most medically challenging patients in the hospital. And I was the specialist who treated them. And I treated them with music. And it was amazing because the pain management director would be like, I don't understand, how you do it. I'm like, it's not me.
Yeah.
It's music. It's far more powerful. I know you had a bad experience with your music teacher as a kid. I did too. But music as a tool is very, very powerful. And when used correctly, can produce profound changes in the brain, in the nervous system, in the mind body of an individual, all the way from preterm infants, all the way through the lifespan to elderly, even to actively dying people.
Now, what kind of changes did you see working with patients in oncology in that setting?
The most rewarding thing for me was to watch. So at the beginning and at the end of sessions, we would ask them to rate their pain and their anxiety on their own 10-point scale because they're subjective. There's not like a blood test for them. So typically they would report about a 50% reduction in pain after a single music therapy session and a 65% reduction of anxiety after a single session. That was pretty rewarding. But one of the most interesting things would be when I would get referred to the ICU to work with patients in a coma. Patients in a coma, not conscious, but their heart rate, their blood pressure, their respiratory rhythms, if the medication isn't working properly, all of those can be elevated and their body's working too hard. And then the medication, they have to crank up the medication and the anxiolytics and the paraleptics and all this crazy cocktail of really powerful stuff. And I would go in with my guitar and I would look at the heart rate monitor like a metronome. I would just start to play my guitar to their heartbeat. Just a nice, relaxing do, 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 just based on their heart rate. And then after about 5 minutes, after matching their heart rate, I would begin to slow down my tempo of my guitar. And their heart rate would follow.
Wow.
And their blood pressure would follow. And their respiratory rhythm would follow, even though they were in a coma. And you could tell because it's all measured. It's all on the computer. So before I would start the session, I just write down the numbers, provide the music, walk out, write down the numbers afterwards, and you could just see A, B, all the numbers would drop. Statistically significant drops in blood pressure, in heart rate, in respiratory rhythm. And then that way, the body's not working as hard. They can roll off the medications because now they're calm. And that's fascinating because they're in a coma. So you'd think they're non-responsive,
right.
But the way music works in the auditory system of the body, the ears are still receiving sound from the outside world. And so we're just harnessing the fact that that pathway is still working and we can tap right into the autonomic nervous system with music and adjust heart rate, blood pressure, and respiratory rhythm, all with music.
That's incredible. It almost sounds like subliminal. Would you say it's kind of like subliminal, the way that works?
I'll be honest with you, I don't understand the implications of what subliminal, like how subliminal, what that word means in terms of how the brain is operating. What I can say very confidently because of the research is the music is bypassing the conscious prefrontal cortex, and it is going to work immediately on the autonomic nervous system and the limbic system, which are happening, where that is in a level of consciousness, I can't say, because the patient is in a medically induced coma. So they're not conscious, right? So, but tempo, the nervous system is automatically, it can't not, it doesn't have the ability to resist it. And so it's just a very predictable, reliable way to work with the body. And, the word subliminal to me kind of gets into the mind and, how do you define the mind? But in medicine, we really like to stick with the kind of the physiological, mechanics. And we know that the mechanics of the nervous system respond automatically to external rhythms. So we just kind of leverage that to our advantage.
That's beautiful. I have this clear picture in my mind right now of what that could look like. And I mean, what were the doctor's responses to this? To seeing you playing and then seeing I'm assuming that they were able to see that and like, holy crap, what's going on here?
Yeah, it was often, they were quizzical, as were the nurses, because, in all of their training, their whole world prepared them for the use of prescriptions and procedures to right the ship and fix the mechanics, right? So music as a modality never entered their consciousness in that context. It's kind of like, you ever run into somebody who you're used to seeing in one place and you see them somewhere else and it takes you an extra second to recognize them because out of context. So you're like, oh, hey, yeah, I didn't recognize you right away because I'm not used to seeing you here. That's very much what it was like for the clinical team, because they're not used to seeing music as a clinical tool. They're used to it as an entertainment device or an education device outside of the walls of the treatment room. So it was just an unusual like juxtaposition of things for them. And some of them got it right away and they would refer for music therapy all the time. Some of them were dismissive of it because the research is not where the same level of research with medications or procedures. So they're following what the research shows, and that's totally understandable. So it was kind of a mixed bag. Who really got it are the social workers, because they study the psychosocial impact of pain and anxiety on the patient experience, like the patient as a whole being a self. And so they were the ones who could see the biggest changes because they were looking for those kinds of changes. And so they were always our biggest allies and would refer the most.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are some of the responses and reactions to using music therapy with addiction, and how did you transition into that?
Yeah, so I part of my internship was working in a treatment center with people, 28-day treatment center for addiction, and using music in very different ways in that setting. And that's the cool thing about music therapy is you apply it very differently depending on the population you're serving. So it looks all kinds of different ways because we're treating different goals. So whereas in the hospital, I was really working on decreasing pain and decreasing anxiety. Those are my goals clinically. In the addiction treatment setting, I'm looking at a different approach. So I'm looking at helping people stay in the present moment mentally, because a lot of their past is full of regret, resentment, guilt, shame, trauma. And if their attention is in the past, they're going to run into those emotion states, and there's no control over the past. So it can trigger a stress response in the brain, which then triggers a craving. Their future is where anxiety and fear take place, the unknown, and they have no control over the future, and that can be stressful. And so we can stress ourselves out without leaving our room, just up in our head, right? So that's why mindfulness is so important, because we want to be really clear, oh, where am I right now? Am I in my body, or am I 2 weeks from now playing out a scene that may or may not, probably won't even happen? And music is a fabulous catalyst for pulling you into the present moment, because if you try to engage with music, you know, tap, snap, clap, hum, rap, sing along, strum with music, the music's time-based. So you have to be in the present moment to connect with the beat.
Right.
You can't be in two places at once. So it's an easy way for people to pull themselves back into the present moment when they're tripping out over their future or their past. So we teach them to engage with music, not just listen. Because when you listen to music, ooh, that takes you down memory lane faster than anything, right? Had that experience, you're driving, song comes on the radio, bam, you're somewhere else, right?
Right.
But when you try to like match the kick and the snare beat on the drums with your hands on the steering wheel, or you try to sing along the rhythm of the lyrics, the melody of the lyrics, the words correctly, that's cognitive heavy lifting. Like, you're really processing in the present moment. So when you engage your body with the music, it keeps you in the here and now. And that's really where people in recovery particularly want to be. All of us benefit from staying in the here and now, particularly people in recovery, because when they are stressed, the cravings their brains trigger are cravings for things that have been possibly life-threatening. For the typical human, when they have a stress and they have a craving, it might be for some sugar out of the pantry, and they might go eat out of their pantry. On a scale of harm, you know, rather than putting a needle in their arm, you know, go eat a Pop-Tart is better. That's harm reduction, right? So, you know, maybe go have some nuts. That would really be the best. But, you know, what we want to show them is that everybody reaches for something when they get stressed. Everybody. Yeah. That's the way the brain works. So it's really easy to reach for music. You just have to start to build into your day and into your thoughts and into your immediate environment ways to make it easy. So, for example, here's a really easy way. Most people, 21st century, have a smartphone, and they have a music delivery device in there, whether it's Apple Music or it's Spotify, and they can build playlists. So you build for yourself a power playlist, which is 3 songs that inspire and delight you. And only you, because God invented headphones for a reason. So you, when you're stressed, you pick up your phone and you play your power playlist, and you get up and you go for a walk, and you walk to the beat, and you tap your body to the beat, and you hum or you sing or you rap along if possible to the beat, but you engage your body with the music during your playlist. By the time you get back, your nervous system will have reset. The stress response will have turned off, and you will have prevented a craving from happening. And you'll have made a lot better decisions for the next hour, because a stressed brain relies on the amygdala, which makes terrible decisions and bypasses the prefrontal cortex, actually turns off. And this is where the prefrontal cortex is really our executive functioning, where we can predict future consequences and go, ooh, that might be a bad idea if I fire off that email. But if I'm stressed, I don't have access to that part of me, that counselor, that advisor going, don't do that. And I just, screw you, boom, hit send.
Right.
How many of us have sent a text, said something, emailed something, left a message to somebody that they wish they could hit the undo switch? And the reason why was because their brain was in a stressed state when they did it. And so they didn't have that advantage. But when we lean on and reach for music and reach for that power playlist and give ourselves a 10-minute break, the brain resets, nervous system resets, prefrontal cortex is back online, and you make much better decisions.
Now, I would like to share a little bit of a testimony on this for myself without realizing there was any benefit to this. You know, I naturally would do stuff like this with reaching for music. And
Yeah.
I think it started when I was about 6 years old, my aunt died. And so we inherited some of her stuff. And I got her keyboard. And I had a keyboard in my room. And I didn't know how to play piano. But I just remember sitting in there for hours, just like playing on the
Yep.
keyboard. And I would have a story in my mind. And in my mind, it's like, oh, this is a wedding song. And it would be like, I just play the whole thing. And I don't think it sounded good. I have no idea. But that got me in. I made a connection where it's like anytime I felt that discomfort inside, I would naturally just go for something. And it always had, when I was the most successful with that, it was something that was readily available, where I could
Yes.
just leave a guitar out all the time, or I had a drum I left out. And it's so cool to hear you speaking about this, because I'm like, that was a thing. Like that
Yep.
was something guided me to this
Yep.
as like a coping mechanism or something, that it really served me. And having the information that you have, and I can see how I could have utilized it even more.
I find that when I went back to school for music therapy, it was like Tales of the Obvious, chapter
Mm-hmm.
1, chapter
Yeah.
2, chapter 3. And at $900 a credit hour, I was a little bit annoyed. Really? I've experienced all this. You're not telling me anything I haven't already felt or experienced. What my degree gave me was the language behind why and
Mm-hmm.
how the
Yeah.
musical experience occurs for human beings. And that allowed me to then kind of decode it for others, and then they could be validated in their own experience and
Mm-hmm.
then feel empowered to reach for it more confidently, more often, more reliably. Like, this is a legitimate tool for self-care. Wow, it's not just entertainment or
Right.
education. And that's really this therapeutic application. Like, we've all been comforted by music.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have necessarily the language to understand what the mechanisms were, what was at play, why, but we knew what we were feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yeah.
feeling, that connection, that's what matters. Right. And so it's and human beings as a species are insanely musical. First of all, one of the biggest myths out there is that there's a music gene and
Mm-hmm.
that only a few people have it. That is not true at all. There's no such thing as a single music gene anywhere. They study looking for it all the time. Music's far too complex to be reduced down to a single gene expression.
Mm-hmm.
What they do find, all cultures that we've ever studied, all moms sing to their babies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they all sing the same type of melodies. They follow the same progressions melodically. The words don't matter because the kids don't have language yet.
Right.
That's why the words are so weird. As an adult, when you go back and you learn like kids songs and particularly like Rockabye Baby, you're like, this is terrible. Who wrote this? Kid doesn't care. Kid just hears da 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 da
Yeah.
da, right? So and then the other thing is, all children sing before they speak.
Yeah.
And so what we've understood about music now, evolutionarily and developmentally, is it's what's called a proto-language or a pre-language. All humans are musical. All humans display musicality and sing before they speak, before they have language. And we would never say like you have a language gene or you don't have a language gene, right? Like, it's like, oh, look, language, you acquire it at some point. And what precedes that is music.
I'm just picturing back to when my kids were, around 1 year old, and just like banging on everything.
Yeah.
And just listening to the sounds. And we have a video of my son, River, when he was like a month old or something, maybe 2 months. And he's like singing.
Yep.
And it's, his way that he could do that at the time. And it was the cutest, sweetest thing. But yeah.
It is a deeply human ability to be musical. And we just live in a culture that kind of created a myth about music, which is that some people have it, some people don't. And the thing is called talent, right? Talent's a myth, doesn't exist. Some people
it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it really is. And some people's learning curve is steeper than others.
Right.
So it's like, so the way I try to describe it to people is that talent is just a retroactive assignment of skill acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you learned that quickly? You must be talented.
Mm.
You learned that slowly? You're not very talented. Talent is not really an observable, measurable thing, because you may struggle with one musical instrument. Your learning curve may be rather shallow. You pick up a different musical instrument and you learn it very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't even reduce music, just to say, I'm musical, I'm not musical, because if you give me any human being within 60 seconds, I can have them making music, because I'll simply work through the very simple things and we would assess. Because again, as I shared before we started, is that all human beings scratch and itch in perfect rhythm. And, to the listeners right now, you're just going to hear an egg shaker. But what I'm doing right now is I'm scratching my neck. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget the day that someone explained to me that we scratch in perfect rhythm. It blew my mind, because rhythm is something we also tell a story about, which is that some people have rhythm and some people don't. That's also a myth. Everybody runs on rhythm. Your body, fundamentally, the organizing principle that runs everything in your body is rhythm. Some of us are more coordinated than others.
Right.
So how we move our bodies in space and time, that's not rhythm, that's coordination. That's another story. But we all have access to rhythm. We walk in rhythm, we talk in rhythm, we chew in rhythm, we sleep in rhythm. So if you can hammer a nail, you can hold a drum, and you can successfully play a musical instrument. If you can sigh, you can sing. Now, there's a story about people singing like that, everybody's tone deaf. Well, actually, only 3 out of 100 adults have what's called amusia, which would be like they can't produce tone, right? We give them a drum. Great, right? The rest of us simply are untrained, because our vocal cords are just muscles, ligaments, tendons. And with training, all vocal cords get better at the ability to vocalize and make, intonation. Talent, or not talent, but like beauty is subjective anyway. So you might think that, a Western singer has a beautiful voice, and then you go to Asia and you listen to Chinese opera, and you listen to Vietnamese music, and you listen to what they find beautiful in terms of what the voice can produce. To us, it sounds like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
So it's very much a cultural invention, this idea of beauty. Right. So we can all let it rip, whether it's banging on a drum, strumming on a guitar, or singing. Anybody has one of those 3 capacities in them. I've never met someone who couldn't tap into one of those. And in fact, when I speak around the country, like probably twice a month, I'm out speaking at an event where talking to groups of people who are either struggling with stress, struggling with chronic pain, or like working with entrepreneurs to increase like focus, creativity, connection with their teams, or companies where we're specifically tackling focus, creativity, and connection, because we're in this age of distraction. And actually, I don't even start talking. Everybody gets an egg shaker, and I just walk out and I just start shaking the egg, and then I just invite everyone to start shaking. And within 60 seconds, the entire audience, whether it's 20 or 800, is totally connected. And we've changed tempo, we've changed beats, and we've done all kinds of complex musical things without me ever using a word. And then it's like we've had the lab before we even get to the lecture, and we realize, oh wow, I have this in me. Actually, music's in me. It's just untapped. And so that's like my mission, is really to empower people to reach for music, whether they're reaching for it mindfully to listen to the right type of music at the right time, the right way, or they're engaging with music and they're singing along, tapping along, drumming along, strumming along, right? And when you find the joy, because there's joy in music, you realize like, I'm good. I don't really need to reach for other things if I can have these things readily available, like you said. And so that's one of the important things, is having things in your immediate environment that you can reach for. And that's why it's the phone is low hanging fruit. The other thing about the phone that's great is there are apps on the phone that are virtual music instruments and relaxation apps. So you can make music on your phone. You can listen to music on your phone. You can do meditation on your phone. You can do relaxation to music on your phone. So let's harness something we look at, who knows how many times a day already. Because a lot of people are like, I don't want to buy an instrument. I'm intimidated. Okay, no problem. And one of the things that was very empowering is seeing people on an iPad be able to make music just by pressing a button or, moving their finger in a circle, and they sound like a Juilliard trained harpist. And now they don't have any performance anxiety, and they're now in and they're playing and they're joyful.
There are some games too. Have you seen those games where it's like the notes fall down and you have to do the keys?
Absolutely.
Yeah. My kids
Absolutely.
love those. They're really fun.
Yeah.
Now, can you show us an example of how you might just pick up an instrument and start playing as maybe a stress response, or like, not like you're trying to entertain somebody, but just, as like what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's actually really good insight, because people feel like they have to perform music.
Yeah.
And absolutely not. Actually, the first thing is just play music. And you described it when you shared your story about being in your room with the piano or the keyboard and not knowing how it sounded.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's irrelevant what you're producing. And the point is that you're actually engaging with music in a way that's pleasurable for you and relaxing for you. And regardless of what's being played, that's not the object. When it's therapeutic, the object is your state, your emotional state. When it's performance, the object is the music. Right? So that's a very important distinction. So I might, for example, not play more than 2 chords on my guitar for 45 minutes. But I start playing those chords pretty fast because I'm pissed off. And as I'm expressing, meaning just getting out that energy out of my body, that emotion, which is just energy in motion, I'm just getting it out of my body. I start to, I start to just relax the way I'm playing those 2 chords. But it's irrelevant that I'm only playing 2 chords for 45 minutes to me, because at the end of it, I've changed my state, and that was the purpose.
Yeah.
I think that we get very attached to some sort of producing a result, gotta write a song, gotta perform a song. And if I can't do it well, I'm not going to do it at all. I hear this stuff all the time when I'm out on the road, right? I hear it all the time. And I just none of that matters. We're not on American Idol here. I'm in my garage. You're in your garage. You're in your living room. You're in a bedroom. It's irrelevant. No one else can hear. And if you listen to spa music, a lot of times a half hour, you can get a lot of mileage out of 2 chords in a half hour. And that's the purpose, is you're actually looking for something that isn't really stimulating in terms of its content. You're looking for something that you're just connecting with and matching your rhythm of your body to, and slowing down to.
Now, I hope that this experience will help people out there who are a little bit hesitant because they're they don't really know. So I basically forgot how to play music. I took 15 years off, and then I'm I don't remember any of this stuff. But I just learned, I figured out 3 or 4 chords that I liked. And then I just played those, those are the only 4 chords that I remember. And I just play those in different sequences, in different tempos and things. And it just feels good. And that's literally those 4 chords. That's the only thing I touch.
That's all you need in Western music is 4 chords. Most rock and pop is 2 to 3 chords, maybe a 4th thrown in. And to your point, you hit it. The nail on the head is you just change the order. And when I'm working with teens, A lot of times the teens want to learn how to play the ukulele or the guitar. And ukulele's wonderful instrument. If any of you have kind of like, oh, maybe, yes, you should, because for $50 you can buy a good ukulele.
Yeah.
And with one finger and one note, you're strumming a C chord, and those are all the white keys on a piano. You're off and running. And I'll give, like, in a single lesson, I'll on an index card, I'll just write out 3 chords, right? Which in most Western music, the 1, the 4, and the 5 of any key chords, 1, 4, 5 is the blues. You take those 3 chords, and then I would show them, I would just mix the cards up, just mix up the order, and suddenly I've got a new song. And they were like, that's it? And I was like, I hate to be the one to tell you, we're about to peek behind the curtain of Oz. That's it.
Yeah.
You can, because mathematically the number of different, permutations of that are, plenty to keep you happy. And you don't have to master this instrument. You just have to have fun with it.
Yeah.
And you never have to play for anyone else either, if you don't want to. Your cat maybe, or your dog maybe, like you might let them in, but you don't really, this is really important, because particularly with adults, we're just so like perfectionistic and performance oriented, and like you got to let all that go. And if you're willing and you're able to let that go and come at music again with childlike curiosity and play, because we don't work music, we play it. You don't hit the work button, you hit the play button, right? And so play is foreign for adults. We stop playing because we think that as adults we're supposed to work. And so that's a mindset. Remember, we were talking earlier about what are some actionable things, but what are some mindset things? So the actionable things are like having power playlists and going for the reset walk. But the mindset is that as adults, it's really healthy for you to play.
Yeah.
And there's really good research on it. There's an Institute of Play. There's a great book on the topic, literally, called Play. And in my book, I talk about the importance of play for adults, because there's like an inverse curve of well-being and play. So the more people play, there's a direct curve between play and well-being, and an inverse curve between like mental illness and depression and anxiety and play. And so the less you play, literally the worse you are off. You need play even as an adult. And so our culture is, we go to work, we work out, we go to workshops, we have homework, housework, yard work. It's all framed around the field and the energy of work. And the energy and field of play is totally the opposite, right? If you observe kids playing, they don't look like people in an office building at all.
Right.
That'd be totally inappropriate behavior, right? And it really, would it though? Would it? And if you go to like Mind Valley or Google or Apple, you'll see a lot of play taking place in a work environment in the 21st century, because they've realized that, we need to bridge the gap between these two things, because play is restorative. Play brings us into the present moment. It gets us connected to those around us. It allows us to get things out. And so it's a very powerful medium. So play more is like the mantra. Like if we just got it down to like 2 words, play more.
Love that. That's awesome. Perfect. So yeah, can you show us how you play more, and just what that looks like, what that feels like to do that?
Sure. Like I have a couple of examples. One, I have with me today my Native American flute, which is very different than the Western European flute or the recorder that most of us had to endure, or our kids.
That's my son right now.
Right.
But he wants a Native American flute. That's he's been asking for one. So now I'm inspired.
Do the family a favor and get a Native American flute. It sounds, 10 times better. What's great about a Native American flute is that typically there's only 5 or 6 holes on it, and 5 holes is a pentatonic scale, no wrong notes, literally can't play a wrong note. In terms of holding the instrument, it's very simple. I put my finger pads in the holes and I just exhale. I don't really blow. I just exhale. I don't have to worry about my embouchure, which, the Western European flute is very complicated. Now, I've never taken a lesson on the Native American flute. I don't know what notes I'm playing. I don't know what notes I'm about to play, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to inhale, and then I'm just going to exhale into my flute. And then I'm going to move my fingers, and we'll see what happens. But this is completely made up. Now, I took 2 breaths.
Mm-hmm.
If I usually, I'll go like 4, 8 breaths. By the time I'm 8 breaths on a flute, I am far, far away in the American Southwest somewhere.
I was far away from in the American Southwest. Actually, I'm in Colorado, so I'm right there anyway. But I mean, just in that first breath, I could feel it. I could really feel it. And I'm like, I'm ordering one today.
Yeah. High Spirits is the brand that I'm playing right now. And Odell Berg is the maker, and he's in Patagonia, Arizona. And he makes a good quality entry-level flute. You can get them in different keys or different pitches. And I've had this one for 11 years. And every time it does the same thing. Takes me away, because sometimes the stress is in the present moment. So sometimes we actually need a mental break from what we're in. And what we typically do is we reach for our phone or the Netflix button or like Facebook, and then we go into a black hole for 30 minutes, 2 hours, 4 hours, and we don't know what happened. And we feel bad, why did I do that? I can reach for my flute, and in 8 breaths, I have gone away and come back relaxed.
Now, what I love about the flute as this kind of a tool is it gives you that same experience of like you're holding something. It's like similar feeling as holding a remote, and it has the buttons. And so you like have that muscle memory as you're holding. It's like, oh, this is the comfortable thing. But then you have that different experience.
That's funny. Yeah, it is. It's tactile. So it's visual because it's this beautiful instrument. It's auditory because you're listening to it. It's tactile. And you're slowing your breathing down to play the instrument. And as you slow down your breath, you slow down your thoughts.
I can see that being really...
breaths. Go ahead.
Yeah. I can see that being really powerful for smokers.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that? Do smokers tend to do well with flutes?
It's funny. I haven't had a direct connection with that, but I can tell you I had a lung cancer patient who increased his breath support by buying a Native American flute and just playing it every day. His breath support strengthened as a result of it. He was doing, because they would give them those incentive spirometers, which are these devices in the hospital where you breathe in really powerfully, and it measures your breath support. And you're supposed to do these exercises with this device, and it's like as much fun as paint drying.
Yeah.
And so he just would play his flute every day, and then like he'd go in and like, wow, you rocking on the incentive spirometer. And because he's getting the workout of his lungs inside of play, but the context isn't work, and it's not exercise, it's play.
It's play.
And so, it's like stealth transformation.
Love that. And so that flute had 5 holes.
The particular one, this has 6. And 6. Oftentimes with a 6-hole flute, what they'll often do is they'll come with a leather strap over the 6th hole, so that you're just playing 5 holes anyway.
I see. But that's the one where you can't do it wrong. It's like any note works. Any note works.
Yeah. So 5 holes, pentatonic scale, 5 holes, no wrong notes. Similarly, if you have a piano at your house, go play the black keys. Like I wasn't taught this. The black keys pentatonic scale, 5-note
Oh,
scale, no wrong notes. You can
interesting.
play any two black keys and they sound good together.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're spaced apart so you don't bump into each other. There's less of them. The black keys are actually the beginner keys.
Huh.
But in Western music, the way we teach it, you learn C major and A minor, which are all the white keys. And then you add the black keys, and the mindset is, as I add black keys, this becomes more complex.
Yes, I learned very beginning piano, and it was like, don't touch the black keys. Black keys are off limits. So I'd like cheat sometimes. I'm like, I just did a black key.
Yes.
But yeah, that's so fascinating.
Yep. So that's one of the beauties of, like when you learn how easy it is to reach for music, you're like, this isn't as hard as I thought it was. I'm going to do this more often. And like with a keyboard, you can plug headphones into a keyboard and no one hears it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in terms of the performance anxiety, or if you got other people in the house, oh, my kids are napping, great. Play your keyboard or play your phone with your earbuds in.
Right.
Be a DJ on your phone with Launchpad, a free app that you can mix any type of electronic music with, and everything sounds good in the app. You can't make a mistake in the app. It's just like the pentatonic scale. It's all designed that you're successful despite yourself. And I think that was in music therapy versus music performance. One of the things that I learned as a clinician was how to create musical experiences with people where they can't help but be successful in very short amounts of time. So what I've really mastered is the ability to make anybody musical in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's a gift. I mean, not like it was a gift like I have it, no one else has. It's a gift to give somebody the awareness that they can actually make music anywhere at any time. It's far less than they ever thought. And it's far less than they were told.
Now with these, so I took some notes on these 3 tools, the flute, the black keys on the piano, and the launch pad on the phone. I think that's more like 1 second, because I heard you play that flute and you didn't know what you're doing, and it sounded amazing, and it sounded so good that it's like you don't want to stop. Like once you get that first note, it's done, and that first note takes like half a second. So that's the key, because then you want to come back for more. And if you're having a hard time, because a lot of instruments, like the barrier to entry, like the barrier to a good sound, is quite a large barrier. Like the European flute.
Like the European flute or the violin, or any Western European orchestral or band instrument. They're all, if you wanted to invent the most complex, hardest to play instruments, you would end up with the Western European orchestral instrument and band instrument. They are hard by design. And I don't know if it's by design, but it's just amazing. And I didn't learn about world instruments that were much easier to play until I became a music therapist. And I found there are all kinds of folk instruments that are very, very accessible, very satisfying, a lot of fun. And if you can like match body movements that you already do to the instrument, like if you can dribble a ball, you can play a hand drum. Like I said before, if you can hammer a nail, you can play a frame drum. If you can scratch an itch, you can shake a piece of percussion. If you can exhale, you can play a flute. Those are like, oh, I can do all of those things. Therefore, and I'll be like a millennial here, I can music. I can't music. Yes, you can. You can music. And that's a mindset that, people have to be willing to try. And that's why it's so powerful in group settings. Like when I do the egg shakers at a conference or at a talk, they're doing it before that little voice in their head can even pipe up and tell them they can't. And they're suddenly like tricked into it. And they're like, what just happened?
That reminds me of when you were talking about the coma. When people are in a coma, it's like that. I feel like that's what's happening, is there's a part of them that can't help but match the beat.
That's exactly it. We are wired to be musical as human beings. We are wired for music. I could go more into why that is, but it's not necessary. But trust me, like when we studied the auditory cortex and found that the way that it's wired and the way that the electron or the the acoustic sound turns into electronic signal, mirrors the shape of a keyboard in pitch, where all the pitches are next to each other on the keyboard, and all the pitches are next to each other and wound around each other in the auditory cortex as if it's an instrument. And no one discovered that when they invented the keyboard. No one had access to, no one was doing that kind of science on the brain at that point. So this is in our blood. We've been making music for tens of thousands of years as a species. It's just our Western culture kind of has a little amnesia, mostly because of music technology. Your grandparents knew how to play a musical instrument. They probably had a piano or an organ in the house, because before the phonograph and before the radio, if you wanted music, you had to play it.
Right.
And then radio really changed that for, Western civilization, because you could now just pipe it in and not play it to hear it. And that was the beginning of the shift. And then the other thing that was kind of invented was the idea of like a concert, where I will go watch someone play. And in fact, most of us will watch, and maybe one or a few will actually play. That's a relatively recent invention in human history.
Yeah.
What we did throughout human history is everybody gathered as the community, and we all either sang, danced, or drummed, or a combination, and no one told us which part to do. We just picked the part that resonated with us. And the word for music was a kind of a combination of the words dance and music as a verb. So it'd be like music dance. So because you would never play music without moving to it, and you would never move without music. So like yesterday, I music danced at the full moon, or it was somebody's birthday, so we had a huge music dance, and we music danced all night. And tonight I'm going to go music dance. And that was the way that the language, and that was the way the experience unfolded across the world, tens of thousands of years before the concert and before the radio. And those two things really shifted just in the last few hundred years, Western civilization and Western culture's understanding of music. And we've just forgotten how close we are to it.
Yeah, and I can imagine as the idea of the concert became invented, it's like, wow, they're really good. They're the ones who are supposed to play. I don't play, I just watch.
Yeah.
And then creating that disconnect.
Yep. It's similar to athletics in that we have a spectator culture around sports. And what's interesting though, is there's a little bit of a disconnect. More adults, when I'm speaking at events, I'll survey the audience. Like, how many of you played, some sort of athletics as a kid? Keep your hand up if you're still doing something recreationally, athletically. Most hands that went up, stay up. And then I'll be like, raise your hand if you did some sort of music growing up. Keep your hand up if you're still doing it. Most hands go down. Because there's some sort of disconnect in our culture around music as an adult, that you need to be doing it professionally. You can't just do it recreationally. There's a fundamental breakdown in recreational music making in our culture. Like only about 4 to 6% of grownups will touch a musical instrument in a 12-month period. So for some reason, we just think, oh, they're better at it than I'll ever be.
Right.
Why bother? Or if I want to be good, I've got to spend all this time. Well, why do you have to be good? Start and play and then improve. Right. But play first and just enjoy yourself, and then get really good at something really simple, something basic. Just master that. And don't feel like you have to be playing a guitar solo like, Jimi Hendrix or Jimmy Page or, or Slash in order to be able to play guitar. No, just, look at Tom Petty. Yeah. Tom Petty, not the best looking guy, not the best looking voice, and not the best guitarist. And all of us know, love, and can sing like a handful of Tom Petty songs. Yeah. Like none of that stopped him. Thank goodness. Right. There's a lot of examples like that where you can really master the simplicity of an instrument and enjoy it. And then other people will enjoy it too.
I love it. Thank you so much for everything that you shared today, Tim.
Sure.
What you had mentioned, you have this new program for parents.
Yeah.
Correct. Can you describe that a little bit? And
Sure. It's called Reach for Music, and it's a membership community for successful professionals who, used to play instruments growing up and then got married, got into their career, started having kids, and now they just don't feel like they have the time or energy. They've literally like forgotten about playing. And they used to love it. And they used to spend hours on their instruments. And they just had this great relationship with music. And then just life changed gears. And so I created this group it's a community for people just like that, to reconnect with that amazing feeling that they had when they used to play just 10 minutes a day. And so our members, they either, play or they listen or relax to music 10 minutes a day. And then we have a Facebook group where one of us will like hop in there and we do a Sunday showcase where someone on Facebook Live will jam. And then the rest of us will heart, like it's, and we've created a virtual coffee shop kind of open mic experience from the comfort of your own home. Because as a busy working adult parent, I don't have time to go to open mic nights, and I really don't have the interest anymore.
Yeah.
So, but I can play from my bedroom, from my office, from my garage with Facebook Live into the group. And I can be connected across thousands of miles. And then let's say you're busy, you can watch it later and heart, like when you get to it. And then you're like, right on. And then, so we interact with music on a regular basis. We post in the group weekly. And then we have a monthly monthly music calendar where like you have to go see live music every month. Like get out of the house, go back out, remember concerts, remember how much fun it was going out and seeing live music. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot. I used to do that all the time.
And that's once a month. That's awesome.
Once a month. Yeah.
I think I've done that once a year.
I know. Last year, I only did it once a year. And when I started the group, we just launched in last week of January. And since then, I've already been to 2 shows. And today's like February 20th. And I'm going to go to another show next weekend. And then I'm going to another show 3 weeks after that. Like it's back in my wheelhouse. It's back in my consciousness. And Facebook, how creepy Facebook is. Like I'm getting like sponsored ads for bands that I love. Yeah. Like they're on tour. And now of course I'm seeing it because it's, I'm paying attention, and I'm going to go see in May, like one of my favorite DJs that I've been listening to for 20 years, never seen them live. Yeah. And I'm going to see him in May, and I feel like a kid again. I've got that kind of like, ooh, I'm going to a concert. Yeah. That energy. And that's what's beautiful about being able to reach for music and, do it with a group of people.
I love it. And how can people access this group?
Well, the group, we just closed registration right now. So where there's a waiting list. And if you go to reachformusic.com, reach the number 4 music.com, you can get on the waiting list. And then another thing you can do in the meantime, if you want to enjoy some relaxation from me, I'm happy to give all your listeners a gift of what I call the relaxation vacation, which is some custom made relaxation music that they can soothe and slow down their thoughts and their body to. That's over at sonicrecovery.com, sonicrecovery.com, and just put your name and your email address in, and I'll send you the link to that music. That will also keep you on the radar for when we open up registration again for the group. So that's kind of like a 2-for-1. I would say go to Sonic Recovery, get the relaxation music, and then you'll be in the loop for when we reopen.
Perfect. So that's a great first step for people. sonicrecovery.com. All right. Yep. Well, any last words, any advice, insight, wisdom, anything?
I would just say, like, to those listening right now, I'm not the first person to introduce you to music. You know what music does for you, and now you know a little bit more why. So lean on it, reach for it, and if you need support, ask. And, you weren't meant to do this game of life alone. You're not designed to. So in any area of your life, if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed, reach for someone, and they're going to reach back. It may be them reaching back a week from now. So don't feel bad about reaching out for any help along the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you all for watching and listening. We really appreciate your time and energy today. It's been amazing having you, Tim, and we will see you all soon.
See y'all later.